Hello, my name is Mary, and I was 7 years old the first time my heart stopped beating. I medically died and was brought back through medical intervention. It happened again on 4 different occasions, but has always been able to be brought back. I was always sent back to life from where I went when my heart stopped beating. I was lying in bed sleeping late at night when I was 7. I felt a horrendous pressure on my chest and could not breathe or call out to my mother. I must have knocked my glass of water off of my stand because my parents heard it hit the floor. Then I felt a sharp shooting pain in my head that was agonizing. Next thing I knew, I was going up a slide of sorts. At that time, it seemed like a slide. I was whooshing up the slide at a fast speed, and I felt exhilarated as the pain in my chest and in my head totally disappeared, and I felt tingling all over my body. I felt indescribable love, peace, and euphoria. I had never felt in my life and only felt this when my heart stopped beating and I stopped breathing. I shot off the slide and into what looked like some kind of beautiful valley unlike I had ever seen before. There were flowers all over the place. Some looked like bluebells, some were beautiful bright red and yellow roses, and all sorts of flowers I did not know the name of, but all of them were alive and swaying and were in colours I had never seen before. I thought they were so wonderful and swaying and seemed to be singing some kind of very melodious tunes that reminded me of when I went to church with my parents on Sundays and listened to the choir in church with the organ playing. There was a glow from everything, and there was a pond that seemed alive and wavy, and it gave off the sounds of tinkly bells like the wind chimes that we had on our porch. I just sat on the ground on the beautiful, soft, lush, luminous grass-like substance and was in total awe. It seemed like I had been there forever, and I felt so at home, so happy and not at all frightened. It felt like I had been there before. My cat Buttons, who had died of distemper 3 months before, came up to me and plunked his glowing self in my lap, or where my lap would have been if I had a solid body, but I did not really have one. It was more like I knew he was there, but I could not see my body or his. We were mostly glowing light very brightly with a general outline, and he was purring really loud, and it seemed like he lapped my face, which tingled my spirit in a good way. I heard him purring, but it was different from hearing in your ears. It was more like sounds in my head and a memory of his purring. I was filled with joy at seeing him. I had missed him so much. My parents had told me he had gone to heaven and was with God, and that I would see him again someday, which I did not really believe when they told me. Buttons and I were translucent, which puzzled me. After what seemed like a short time, he was no longer with me. He had gone off, and I wished he had stayed with me. I thought he just wanted to say hello. While I was on the grass, a figure glided toward me and flew all over. His face was the colour of glowing bronze, and he had a white flowing robe on, but I could not see any feet. He just moved toward me as if gliding. I thought to myself, I think this must be Jesus because he kind of looked like a picture of Jesus that hung in the Sunday school room, only his skin was dark copper colour and shiny with a glow, and he seemed to emanate humour and warmth, and he was not at all scary to me. He raised me like I weighed nothing at all, and put me on his shoulders, more like where a person's shoulders were, or so it seemed to me, and started walking, floating with me to where the valley ended, and we were there in a flash. The next thing I knew, he lowered or floated me onto a stone wall, or looked almost like a stone or solid wall to me, but it was glowing and see-through and reminded me of the Mika that came with my brother's microscope kit. His voice was in my head, and he told me that my adoptive mother and father needed me and loved me and would be crushed if I did not go back to them. I was starved and beaten and abused and had gone through a few foster parents before. Finally, a wonderful and loving couple adopted me who loved and did not abuse me and took wonderful care of me. When they adopted me, I had multiple health issues such as rickets, malnutrition and deformed feet due to rickets, so walking was hard for me. I was allergic to many things, including many food allergies and biological things like cut grass and dust. I had horrible hay fever, and my nose ran constantly for most of my childhood due to allergies. I was 20 before I found out that I had allergies. I had extensive allergy tests done and had 14 allergies. My adoptive parents nurtured me back to health and loved me dearly. I did not want to leave where I was, though, as I was afraid that the horrible pain I had felt would come back, and I wanted to stay where I was. It was so beautiful there, and it felt like I was at home and felt a great sense of being where I belonged. He promised me that I wouldn't be in pain if I went back, and he would watch over me for as long as I lived, and I would see him again and be with him. The next thing I knew, I was rushing down the slide thing, which was very dark, like a tunnel. I had had a stroke, and my heart stopped beating, and I was told later I was gone for almost 15 minutes. Later in life, I was diagnosed with sudden cardiac death syndrome, SCD syndrome, also called sudden cardiac arrest syndrome, SCA syndrome. When I became conscious after being sent back by that loving entity, I was hooked up with all sorts of tubes and things monitoring my heart, and also was on oxygen. And I was drooling out of the right side of my mouth. I was in the hospital for about a week, maybe more. They performed many tests to evaluate the damage, and evidently, the damage from the stroke was not too severe, which was a miracle because of how long it took for the ambulance to get to my house. It took almost 10 minutes. It seemed to me like I was gone for a long time beyond Earth. I had no sense of time at all while I was gone, but it seemed way longer than 15 minutes. I still dream about the glowing man who told me I had to go back home to my parents and family, and how he said he would make sure that I did not experience pain. He was good to his word and his promise, whoever or whatever he was. I wanted more than anything to go back to where it was I went when my spirit left my body. To this day, I have a slight droop in my mouth on the right side, but it is not noticeable until I smile. But it is not noticeable if one is not looking for it. That seemed to be the only thing that had been affected. I did not have brain damage, which I believe is a miracle. My parents explained to me that I had died, but the paramedics were able to get my heart beating again with paddles, CPR, and some kind of shot, and I came back. I never was the same after going where I went. Lots of strange stuff happened to me after that, such as seeing auras, impending doom feelings and intuitions that often proved more than often to be true. I just assumed everyone saw auras and experienced what I did and did not learn until I was older that not everyone saw auras. And I was so surprised. To this day, I still see them. Seeing auras is helpful in this Earth's incarnation. It helps me to get a forewarning of danger and an insight into people's state of mind. Each colour I see has meaning to me. That was my first experience with death.